In Alasara, there were once stories of lovers who walked the banks of the river Osonwe together, even in the afterlife. And the story starts on a quiet night with the clear sky stretched wide over Alasara, vast as a mother's love, studded with stars like scattered beads. By the great river Osonwe, where stories are born and secrets kept, the young ones gathered as they had for generations before. Their laughter rose with the beating drums, their feet moved to rhythms old as the earth itself. Among those gathered was F, whose name meant love in the old tongue. Daughter of Aniwura, the wise woman, F was like the river itself, flowing where she wished, never caught, never tamed. Many had tried to win her heart, but she slipped past them like water through eager fingers. But on this night, something stirred in the air. For there stood Jebori, son of the great hunter Ogonlona. His eyes were keen as a hawk's, his spirit fierce as a leopard's, yet patient as the wise tortoise. Many wonders had he seen in the forest deep, but none like F under the starlit sky. As flames danced and the river sang its endless song, Omorin, keeper of tales, rose to his feet. The young ones leaned close, for they knew that when Omorin spoke, magic filled the air. Tonight, he would tell of love that endures like mountain stone, of hearts that beat as one even when the world stands between. F found herself drawing near the fire. Beside her, quiet as shadow, came Jebori. No words passed between them, but the stars above saw what was beginning, a tale that would join the many stories of Alasara, to be told in whispers and songs for years to come. One by one, the others drifted away like leaves on the wind, until only F and Jebori remained, by the river's edge. Their feet sank into the cool earth as the Osonwe hummed its ancient tune. This river, F said, her voice soft as morning mist, is the heart of our people. Here my mother found love, and her mother before her. The river knows all our stories. You speak of the river as if it lives and breathes, Jebori said, wonder in his voice. F's smile shone in the darkness. Does it not? See how it swells with the rains, rages with the storm winds, and gives itself freely when the earth tests. Then if love is like a river, Jebori wondered aloud, should we fear being swept away? F's fingers touched the water, sending rings of silver rippling outward. Only those who never learned to swim, she answered, wise as the river itself. Their eyes met, and in that moment, even the night birds held their song. The night stretched long, wrapping them in quiet understanding. Above, the moon watched, its silver face serene. They spoke of little things, of childhood games, of the elders' stories, of dreams they had never before dared share. They hesitated before parting, each reluctant to break the spell. But even as they stepped away, something invisible bound them together, as strong and silent as the pull of the tides. As F lay on her mat that night, she traced invisible patterns in the air, reliving the way Jebori had looked at her. And in his heart, Jebori stared at the roof beams, his heart echoing the river's song. Morning came to Alasara like golden honey poured from the sky. Life stirred, children chasing chickens, mothers at their cooking fires, men setting out with baskets to gather the earth's gift. But for Jebori, the world had changed. The river had whispered a secret in his heart, and her name was F. In her mother's house, F walked with the healing herbs, but her thoughts danced like leaves in the wind, remembering the night before, the fire's glow, the river's song, and the quiet strength of the hunter's son. No promises had been made, yet something had taken root in her heart, like a seed waiting for rain. When evening returned, like an old friend coming home, the youth gathered once more by the Osonwe. As surely as water flows downhill, as surely as birds return to their nests, F and Jebori found each other again. Some things need no words, like the understanding between earth and sky. The river kept their secret. The stars blessed their meeting. But love, like fire, can warm or burn. As the moons waxed and waned, F and Jebori's hearts grew wild with passion. They spoke of forever in whispers, their love fierce as thunder. Then came the night when they heard tell of an ancient way, a binding deeper than marriage, stronger than death itself. Jabari came up with the idea. Let us make a covenant. She frowned. A covenant. A promise stronger than words. He knelt and took a sharp stone, pressing it lightly against his palm until a bead of blood welled. He held it out to her. If we must be parted, let our spirits remain bound. F hesitated only for a moment before mirroring his actions, their hands pressing together, their lifeblood mingling. Beneath a great Iroko tree, whose roots reached into the spirit world, they made their choice. The river swelled with the coming rains, its song deepening as the seasons turned. In the village, the elders watched with quiet understanding as Jabari and F moved through their days, drawn to each other like the tides to the moon. Their love, though unspoken, was seen in the way their hands brushed when reaching for the same fruit, in the way their laughter rang together like a melody well rehearsed. But love is never left to flourish unchallenged. One evening, a messenger from the Oba arrived, his voice carrying across the gathering. The great King Adorimi seeks a man of honor to stand among his emissaries. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, and the elders nodded in approval. The king's summons was no small matter, it was a calling of prestige, a duty beyond the river's banks. Jabari's name was called. F, standing among the women, felt the air leave her lungs. Her heart, once as steady as the river's current, now twisted in the grip of uncertainty. Jabari stepped forward, pride in his stance, though his eyes flickered toward F, just for a moment, but long enough for the spirits to take note. That night, F wandered to the river's edge, her feet cool against the damp earth. She traced idle patterns in the water, her thoughts heavy. When she finally heard footsteps behind her, she did not need to turn to know it was him. "You will leave," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jabari stood beside her, watching the moonlight shimmer on the river's surface. "It is a great honor." The king commanded him to journey to distant lands, to hunt rare beasts in forests where different stars hung in the sky. Such an honor could not be refused, though it meant many moons would pass before his return. As F watched Jabari prepare for his journey, something shifted in her heart like sand beneath flowing water. The thought of waiting endless moons, with only memories to warm her nights, began to feel like holding smoke in her hands. Even before Jabari's feet touched the path that would take him away, F's heart had already begun its own journey toward another future, another love. When Uzoma came to the village, he spoke of lands F had never seen, of adventures that made her spirit soar. His presence was like the first rain after a long drought. The blood covenant she had made with Jabari began to feel like a chain rather than a bond, a weight that kept her from flying free. At first, F denied what her heart whispered. She threw herself into her duties, worked longer with her mother's herbs, avoided the river where she once met Jabari. But she had found newfound love, at a time when she felt alone. Jabari felt the change, as a hunter feels the shifting wind. He saw how F's eyes no longer met his, how she turned away when Uzoma passed. Her friends even called F to them, noticing the change, their faces grave as storm clouds. "F," they said, "a blood covenant is not a chain to be broken. It is a rope around the neck of those who make it. Think well before you choose your path." On the night before Jabari was to leave, F came to him by the river. "Let us spend one last night together," she offered, her voice gentle as falling leaves. She thought to give him this final gift of remembrance, though her heart was already walking a different path. Jabari's heart leaped like a fish breaking water. He saw this night as a promise, a chance to rekindle what was fading, to remind her of their sacred bond. "Yes," he said, hope rising in his chest like morning mist. "One night to remember what we promised beneath the Iroko tree." They spent the night by the river, where the waters sang their endless song. Through the dark hours, he spoke of his return, of the life they would build together, of how their blood oath would keep them connected across the leagues. But F's thoughts were like the river beside them, already flowing toward a different sea. The blood covenant, once so sacred in her eyes, now seemed like mere words spoken in the passion of youth. Before morning came, F rose, knowing she would not await his return. She wished him well on his new path, but told him he'd have to go alone. Jabari's hope shattered like clay dropped on stone. "But our covenant," Jabari whispered, his voice rough with fear. "The blood we shared beneath the Iroko tree. What power do old traditions hold over the heart?" she asked him. "You would give me one night," he said, his voice hollow as a dead tree, "when you promised me forever." The spirits that gathered their oath stirred in the darkness. They had waited, patient as the grave, for this moment when love would turn to ash. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, Jabari's hands found F's throat. Perhaps it was the spirit moving through him, perhaps it was his own heart's darkness. The why doesn't matter in the end. Like their friends had warned, the covenant claimed its price. As F's last breath faded like mist, the Osanwi wept, flooding its banks for the first time in years. Jabari ran until his legs could carry him no more, but the weight of his deed was heavier than any burden he had ever carried. The spirits' voices filled his head, screaming of betrayal and blood debts paid. When dawn broke over Alasara, his feet led him back to where it all began, the great Iroko tree where their blood had first mixed with sacred earth. And when they found him as the sun set, beneath the same branches where he and F had sworn their eternal love, his body cold as the river. The covenant was complete, sealed with the blood of both who had made it. Now, on nights when the moon is full and the wind whispers through the trees, two shadows can be seen by the Osanwi's banks. They walk there still, F and Jabari, bound by their oath, neither living nor dead, forever apart yet eternally together. This story teaches us an important lesson: some promises can be too heavy for our hearts to carry. As it is passed down through generations, it reminds young people to think carefully about the commitments they make. Love is powerful, but when it is linked to blood or duty, it can come with a heavy price.